latest on our other games. It's time now for our Fox Watch, and we begin with another team contending in the NFC Central, the pass-happy Minnesota Vikings. And calling today's game between the Vikings and the Rams is Ray Bentley. Ray?
Thanks, JB. It's a lovely day in St. Louis where the story is the Rams running game. Last week in the loss to the Saints, only 56 yards on the ground, 5 fumbles. Gerald Moore will be on the bench in this one. Greg Hill is coming in to take over for him. Hill was inactive last week. Now, the Rams need a big day from Hill, if only to keep that Vikings offense off the football field. The 4 Norsemen had a huge day last week. Brad Johnson has looked great, and he's got some weapons now. Rookie Randy Moss will stretch the defense. Chris Carter keeps drives alive, and Robert Smith will hit you in the belly. The slow-starting St. Louis team has to strike early to stay in this one. Let's go to Pittsburgh and Kenny Albert.
Thanks very much, Ray. The Bears and the Steelers, one of the oldest rivalries in the National Football League. My partner, Tim Green, is with Chicago head coach Dave Wannstedt.
Coach, a lot of people have overlooked the Bears. Then you come out last week and play real tough against Jacksonville. Now, I know you lost that game by a point, but what did it do for this team?
Well, the biggest thing I think it did for our team offensively, we struggled in the preseason. We moved the ball. We ran it well against Jacksonville. We made some plays in the passing game. And I think our guys feel pretty good that we can carry the thing over today. It's going to be tough here on the road, but they're confident.
And today for the Bears, running back Edgar Bennett will play the first series of the game, and then he'll be replaced by the rookie Curtis Enis. Now let's head to New Orleans and Kurt Menefee.
Thanks, Kenny. Here inside the Superdome where the Carolina Panthers visit the Saints, things are nice and dry. But outside, the city of New Orleans has been declared a federal disaster area. 17 inches of rain over the weekend, 13 on Friday alone. But inside, the Saints' biggest concern will be their second starting quarterback in as many weeks. Danny Werfel gets the start in place of the injured Billy Joe Hobart, who tore his Achilles last week against the Rams. Now, the Carolina Panthers have injury concerns of their own. Starting wide receiver Ray Caruth is inactive today with a sprained foot. Rocket Ismail starts in his place. Ismail had 119 yards receiving last week against the Falcons. Now to Atlanta and Sam Rosen.
Thanks very much, Kurt. The Falcons, it's their home opener for them. They won on the road at Carolina last week. They're trying to go 2-0 for the first time since 1986. They take on a Philadelphia Eagles team that's hurting. The Eagles went to training camp with perhaps the best cornerback tandem in the NFL, and Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor. They're both out, so 2 youngsters start at cornerback. Alan Rossum and Al Harris, only 1 NFL start between them. Watch for the running of Deuce Staley today for the Eagles. He was a highlight last week with 95 yards rushing in his first NFL start. He starts in place of Charlie Garner, who will be in uniform. Right now, let's go back to JB in his new home in L.A.
All right, Sam, thank you very much. And our other early matchup is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Green Bay Packers. And we'll take an in-depth look at that game later in the show. Then later this afternoon, most of you will see the Dallas Cowboys tackle the Broncos as the defending Super Bowl champions look to extend their 17-game home winning streak. Meanwhile, others will catch the G-Men against the Raiders or the Cardinals against the Seahawks. Coverage begins at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 Pacific, right here on Fox. Let's talk Giants in Oakland. Terry, who picked the Raiders to win the Super Bowl this year?
To win.
To win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He owes $2.5 million. He will always pick the Raiders.
And Chris, last week, spanked big time by the Chiefs. Rough start for the Raiders.
Rough start. Somebody should have put a 10 over that circus last week. That was embarrassing. Now, I'll tell you how he did. He gave it to me a little bit later. How many times does Derek Thomas have to sack the quarterback, though, before they give poor Pat Harlow a little help?
Obviously,
John Gruden's got the computer. It's got to be in the computer.
Obviously, it's 7. It's 7. You know, that's the thing that it sets the whole thing. I've been up in Kansas City. I've been up there on a Monday night. Derek Thomas thrives at home with the crowd noise. That disrupted the entire offense. You know, you pass protect from inside out, especially against a blitz package, and it's very difficult to say we're going to protect from inside out because they blitz up the middle. We're going to leave Derek Thomas alone outside, and we're not going to give him help because we're concerned about the inside blitz. Well, folks, let me tell you something. How many times do you have to give up the sack, force fumbles, 10 sacks, 5 turnovers? Ooh. Every offensive lineman was penalized. Desmond Howard looked like it was the first time he fielded a punt. But I'm here to tell you, folks.
They're going to win it all, baby. They're going to win it all.
Amen. The Giants had problems last week with their secondary. Washington and Green did a good job passing versus them. And I'll tell you what, I'm picking the Raiders this week again.
Oh, how surprised am I? Listen, folks, let me just remind you of one thing. The Giants won last year because they were the #1 team in the National Football League at creating turnovers. 49 of them. What did they do against the Redskins? I don't care what the Redskins did. The Giants got the turnovers, the short field. They got the touchdowns. And Bennett rushed for 115 yards against these Raiders last week. Way and that bunch will do the same this week. They'll just hold Kaufman up. They'll get into Georgia's face. Hello.
You know what? Trent Green, though, started last week 15 for 16 against this much vaunted Giants defense. And, yes, they did take on a little pressure and a little heat at the end of that ball game. But Jeff George is a much better passer than Trent Green. That was Trent Green's first game. I agree with Howie. I think the Raiders are going to win today.
Oh,
baby.
What do they owe you? What do they owe you? What's out?
No, a little fear down on that end of the table, though. You know what it is? That's exactly right. Hey, Howie will educate the American public how to give a tackle a little help later on the football field. All right, folks, it's now time to tell you what's happening off the field in the National Football League. The season's first vote of confidence goes to Rams coach Dick Vermeil. Now, despite the players being near mutiny over the NFL's longest practices, questionable play calling, and highly criticized personnel moves, Rams management is 100% behind Vermeil for the entire 98 season. Now, Bruce Smith was not saying, "Show me the money" last week to Bills owner Ralph Wilson. When Smith sat out the season opener, rumors circulated it was a contract ploy. However, Smith's agent said that his knee is what kept him out, and while he expects to play today in Miami, it is indeed still hurting. All right, folks, we've got a lot more coming for you on today's show, so let's find out what else is on tap.
Today on the one and only Fox NFL Sunday.
Say it like you mean it this time, though.
God, that's the best you're going to get.
Once known for their doomsday defense, last season was doomsday for Dallas. However, after an impressive opening day win, there are signs that America's team is the bounce-back boys. Pam Oliver goes to Big D to see if the Cowboys are for real. And speaking of real, the Jaguars and Chiefs are being hailed as the real zeal of the AFC. Susie Culver reports from Jacksonville as the Jags host KC in a possible preview of the AFC title game. Then, he's the captain of a Viking ship that could sail to the Super Bowl. But success hasn't come easy for Brad Johnson. Drafted in the 9th round and once relegated to World League duty, Johnson's rising career was put in jeopardy by a serious neck injury. Terry and Brad talk about overcoming adversity and getting to the big bowl. Coming up, coming at ya, the one and only Fox NFL Sunday.
Nicknamed Slash because of his versatility, Pittsburgh's Cordell Stewart has settled quite nicely into his quarterback spot. Thank you. Although he doesn't care for that nickname now, I'm sure he's quite pleased with his 12-5 record as a star. We welcome you here to Studio 2A at the Fox Network Center and Fox NFL Sunday. You know, two playoff caliber teams the Steelers could very well meet in January are the Chiefs and Jaguars. And while Kansas City and Jacksonville are not thinking playoffs just yet, today they square off in what could be a preview of the AFC Championship game. And our Susie Culver is in Jacksonville with more on that game. And hello, Susie.
Hi, JB. You know, these are two teams with tons of talent, but you can't help focusing on the Jags' explosive offense. Last week, a game-winning drive that Mark Brunell called the best drive in franchise history. Or KC's defense, one of the stingiest in the NFL. Last week, they ran all over the Raiders. 10 sacks. Derek Thomas had 6 on his own, and his wreak havoc attitude is spreading.
Incentive every day that I get to watch a player, and I'm trying to improve too. You know, every time he gets a sack or I get a sack, you know, there's that stare, there's that glance that, okay, I need to pick it up. And every time he picks it up, I try to pick it up. But he picked it up a little bit more than me last week.
What goes through your head as you're watching that film?
A lot. Get rid of it. Yeah, Baselli, we've been watching film on and watching his best moves, his speed, and sometimes we shiver.
You know, he does things that not very many people can do. His jump off that football is unbelievable, and he's on you before you know it. So it's just something you got to deal with.
Well, DT says it's hereditary.
He was born with that? Well, maybe they might slice him or clone him or something like that, because I don't see too many guys in the league doing what he's doing.
Bizzelli, Thomas, one-on-one is the matchup of the day, but there's another major storyline here. Injuries, especially for the Chiefs. Andre Rison and Tamarick Vanover, both deactivated. Dale Carter won't start, but he will play. They're also without their highest-paid defenseman, their best offensive lineman, and their quarterback. Rich Gannon fills in. Now, he went 5-1 last year in place of Elvis Gerbach, but the one came right here. 6 sacks, 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions. JB, could be a long day for the quarterbacks.
All right, Susie, thank you very much, and we'll find out more about that as well. All right, folks, there's a lot more happening around the National Football League, so let's check it out. Today in Gotham, Gang Green gangs up on the Ravens. In Jetland, that boom you hear is the eruption of New York's new ace QB. No, Foley doesn't wear fur, but he does wear out defenses. In an interconference catfight, the Bengals and Lions scratch it out in Detroit. What's that? The 0-1 Bengals start slow again? Hey, check this out. The past 7 seasons, Cincy is a combined 9-48 in their first 8 games. Ouch! Saving San Diego is Private Ryan, as Ryan Lee charges his undefeated Bolts into Tennessee. Nevertheless, Ryan will have to turn a better lead should he win the first regular season game played in Nashville. Home is where Miami's heart is because, well, check this out. Since 1970, the Dolphins are an NFL best 24-4 in home openers. That's bad news for Buffalo as the banged-up Bills face the Fish in Miami. In another AFC East tilt, the Patriots meet the Colts in New England. Now, this game features the last 2 quarterbacks selected #1 in the NFL draft. But tonight, Peyton and Drew look to avoid 0-2. Monday, nothing Spina for this former Niner as Stubby seeks revenge against his former mates. It's Trent, I'm still green, versus Steve, I'm still young, as the 49er Roadshow travels to D.C. Kansas City at Jacksonville. Last year, Jacksonville had its way with Kansas City, forcing 5 turnovers on KC's last 7 possessions. But last week against Chicago, Jacksonville's offense looked like it was shaking off the cobwebs.
Well, Brunell had the big drive to win it at the end of the game, but it looked like he was really frustrated throughout most of the game. And the reason is Chicago took away the deep ball. He loves to throw it down the field. Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardle, they took that away. And you could see Mark Brunell was just a little frustrated out there. But in order to do that, they had to play their 2 safeties deep. So that meant James Stewart ended up with a career day for him. And we all remember what happened to this Jacksonville offense when Natron Means got hot running the football. If they can keep that kind of balance, this team's going to be very tough this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's one thing that helps both of these quarterbacks. Gannon gets his first start of the year. Last year, his first start was against Jacksonville. It was a nightmare. Protection was bad, fumbles, turnovers, etc. But the thing that helps both of these quarterbacks today, especially those 2 tackles from Jacksonville, Bizzelli and Searcy, is #1, they're at home. #2, Stewart had a big game last week running the football, which lends to what? Play-action passes. Talking to Gunther Cunningham, their big concern is 2 tight ends, play-action pass. Brunell gets out of the pocket. He makes things happen on the run. Conversely, Gannon can do the same thing, Terry. That helps. Donnell Bennett had an outstanding game last week, too. That helps play-action pass, helps keep defenses honest.
Yeah, before I go into what I want to say, if they had stayed with Gannon last year in that playoff game instead of bringing Gerbach in, I truly believe Kansas City would have been there.
I agree.
I really do. One of the nice things, I want to say one thing to Victor Riley's mama. Don't worry, your baby at right tackle, his first start is going to be all right. Kansas City is going to put 2 tight ends, Popson on one side, and then Gonzalez on the other side, and they're going to help him out. So he's going to be fine. Don't worry about a thing. The only problem with trying to help a rookie right tackle out, and you go 2 tight ends, you really narrow your focus in what you can do with the passing game. Tells me they're going to run the football, which I don't think Bennett will be able to do today.
Can you say hi to my mom, too? Would that be all right?
Hello, Chris.
Hey, it's
Mom.
her birthday.
I would say hi to my mom and, of course, Ma Brown.
Well, anyway, hey, a couple of mothers may be concerned in Washington. No surprise that Trent Green will be the starter for Washington now. Gus Frerotte pulled. It was amazing last week. We saw Gus's confidence just fading right before us, and I remember your remark. You said, hey, I've been there.
I'm telling you, something's up. Norv Turner is a quarterback's dream. He's a guy that should be able to get a quarterback to play at a high level. I know one thing. If you lose your confidence as a quarterback, you are finished. I have rolled out to the right, had guys wide open, but my confidence was so shattered, I threw it right into the ground. And what happened? I got benched. Gus Frerotte was the hero in Washington when he Shula got shipped down to New Orleans. And now it's Trent Green's turn. I don't understand what's happened in Washington, but I'm going to try to find out. It's got to be something more than what meets the eye.
Your mama, Navis Genoa, is very proud of you. Are you concerned about it?
She likes my blue suit.
Likes the blue
Absolutely.
suit. All right,
Good.
folks, we've got a lot more coming in today's program, including a look at America's team. They were impressive against the Cardinals, but are the boys really back? And Terry talks with Vikings Brad Johnson, who is not only a happy quarterback, but, folks, he's also healthy.
I had to teach myself of really just trusting my arm and letting the thing just fly out of it.
One is the mentor, the other the prodigy, but both Chris Carter and Randy Moss have one thing in common. They can find the end zone. Last week, each scored twice in Minnesota's victory. It's time for our Miller Lite really, really good offensive and defensive teams of the week. Now, last week, the 49ers had a really, really good offense. Some would call it great. San Francisco racked up over 550 yards of total offense and scored 5 touchdowns while beating the Jets 36-30. Meanwhile, last week's best D belonged to KC as they registered 10 sacks and 5 fumble recoveries in a 28-8 victory over Oakland. As we welcome you back to the Fox Network Center. You know, one of the NFL's best up-and-coming rivalries is the Bay-to-Bay fray, or simply Tampa Bay versus Green Bay. But catchy names aside, the Packers have dominated this divisional series, winning 10 of the last 11 meetings. In fact, Tony Dungy is 0-5 as a head coach against the Pack, and last year Green Bay ended Tampa's season by shutting them down in the divisional playoffs. So the question is, can the Bucs get over that mountain-sized hump? For more on that and today's game, let's join Dick Stockton. Hello, Dick.
Hello, JB, and that is the question of the day. Can the Buccaneers bridge the gap? And they knew that they had to improve their passing game during the offseason, so they signed free agent Bert Emanuel from the Atlanta Falcons. Had a good game last week against Minnesota in a losing cause, but suffered a sprained ankle, so he's out. So the responsibility today at wide receiver comes with this quartet, including Jacquez Green, their top draft pick from Florida. Didn't play last week, so he is making his NFL debut this time around. And as you mentioned, JB, Tony Dungy still looking for his first victory as head coach against the Green Bay Packers.
We've played them 5 times, and we've played some good games against them, but we just haven't had that big play when we needed it to win. And I feel like our guys think that we've got to get that done in order to challenge for the division championship. And today's the best day to start.
Well, it would be the best day to start, and how do the Buccaneers bridge that gap?
You know, I think you touched on it right at the start. You talk about the receiving core. You know, the other part of that receiving core is the quarterback. And I think the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has to pick up his game if he's going to get that part done. And Dilfer did last week. He looked pretty strong. They certainly have a chance to take that next step. Now, along in that recipe, there are some other things that have to happen. The biggest thing is they always play solid defense. That didn't happen last week. And the other part of that recipe is they have to run the football. And again, they didn't get that done last week. So in order for the Tampa Bay Bucs to be the team they want to be, they have to fire on all cylinders.
And, of course, you mentioned Trent Dilfer, who last week suffered a couple of injuries, a slight separation of his throwing shoulder and a deep thigh bruise. The thigh bruise has bothered him more, but he says he's ready to go, and that's the story. Right now, let's go back to Hollywood and James Brown.
All right, Dick and Bub, good seeing you guys. Hey, Dick and Bub, let me turn to our fair weather fan, Terry Bradshaw, who jumps on and off the bandwagon all the time. Hey, absolutely, your Bucs. What?
Whoa. Hey, just like the first week of school, JB.
Okay.
You know, during the first week of school, you can change classes. You know, you can switch classes.
How many are you changing now?
Well,
You're going to add your Super Bowl pick?
I'm thinking about making a little drop.
Bucs can ill afford to start 0-2, but they got a tall order facing them in Green Bay.
Well, I tell you, losing Bert Emanuel last week really hurts them badly. He was the guy one-on-one that they expected to have a big game, and he did. Carl Williams will take his spot. Also, I'm worried about Mike Allstott. Remember last year, the great effort at the 1-yard line against the Vikings that got him in for the touchdown? 3 chances at short yardage this week, and none of those were converted, and a fumble. But the guy that got it done was Dilfer. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to win this football game, but I'm a little more concerned about Mike Holmgren and the way he used Dorsey Levin. 25 rushes, threw him 10 passes. You tell me there wasn't a little bit to get even with? Because that's the same contract on the table at preseason that he eventually signed, Chris.
He was definitely working them. But the thing that really surprised me last week, I didn't think anybody could humiliate this Tampa defense the way that Minnesota did. So I called Brian Billick, the offensive coordinator of Minnesota. I said, how'd you guys do that? He said, I just put in the 3 wide receivers, and they played real soft in the secondary, so we just kept running the football. And then when John Lynch, their outstanding strong safety, came up to help against the run, he said, then I've got one-on-one with my great wide receivers down the field, and that's how we won the game. Well, guess what? Green Bay has the exact same football team. If Dorsey Levens can have a big day today, that's going to force that man coverage down the field, and I think it's going to be a tough day for that Buck defense again.
Matt Millen hit the nail right on the head. It comes down to Trent Dilfer. They've ran the ball successfully up in Green Bay, over 200 yards last year in one game. Trent Dilfer, 7 starts, one touchdown pass, 9 interceptions. He needs to pick his game up. That Tampa Bay defensive line is going to be angry. Do you have your own parking space at that drop ad office?
Every year.
Who wrote that for you? There's no way that's a witticism from you.
In the last 4 years, only 2 teams have started 0-2 and gone on to make the playoffs. But let's stay in the black and blue division. Brad Johnson, nice game last week, 4 touchdown tosses, and he's healthy.
Yeah, the one thing that's all of us that have played this game, especially those of quarterbacks that have had to leave the game because of injury. I had to leave because of a torn ligament in my right elbow. That's your dream. That's your whole life, and it comes crashing down on you, and you're finished. But for Brad Johnson, when he had his neck operated on, the herniated disc, he thought it was over. The miracle came, and he's back about 7 months early, playing better than ever.
I knew something was wrong because that's the worst I've ever played. The more I played, the worse it got, and then we saw how the ball was coming out of my hands, and I didn't know what was happening until the next day. I didn't know I had a herniated disc in my neck, and it was rough, you know.
Which vertebrae?
C5 and C6.
Okay, it's high.
And the thing about it, everything went from here. I had pain right through here, and all my weakness was right here in my forearm. That's the grip. If it would have gone down my left hand, there'd been no problem from day one. But it's just, this is my livelihood.
Well, his arm is lively again. Last Sunday's 4 touchdown passes proved that. After overcoming a disc problem, Brad Johnson can still air it out.
Our second touchdown we had where he rolled out to the left and threw it in the back of the end zone. I mean, he told us as we leave the huddle, Chris, get to the back and I'm going to find you.
Deep in the end zone for Carter. Touchdown!
He knows where the ball is supposed to go. He has the intelligence to read the defenses. He makes the accurate throws, and he knows how to stand in there and take a hit.
Recovery normally takes about 18 months, but Brad was back in the lineup after only 9 months. It looks easy now, but Brad was full of doubts at the start of training camp.
Did you drop back and go? It happened a few times, you know. I was so careful with it, I had to keep my left hand on it. Like
you're lucky.
Pushing it, so.
You're lucky you didn't pull a muscle here, hurt your elbow, do your shoulder.
That was one of my biggest worries. I didn't want to change my motion to throwing.
Hey, folks, do you see that tape on Brad's left hand? That's his way to send a special message to his mother.
It means I love you, Mom, and I'm thinking about you. He never called me Mom either. He always called me E.
My mom, she's fanatic.
My baby. He gives me a signal.
Yeah.
He gives me a signal.
Yeah, I'm always giving a signal. I used to brush my hair back to give him a signal. I played basketball at Florida State. Well, then they all thought I was a pretty boy, and I know I'm not a pretty boy. So
no, you're not pretty.
I'm not pretty. I know that.
I'm not pretty. Yeah. I mean, you're better looking than I am. Yeah. But, I mean, that ain't a compliment, all right?
It's true.
Brad's just like me. We both love football and country music. His favorites include Joe D. Messina and Shania Twain.
Ain't nothing better. We beat the odds together.
And every day when I wake up, I'm pumped up. I am ready to come to work.
Right now, the nerve in Brad Johnson's arm and his nerve in the pocket are both all right. Hit it, Jody!
Oh, I'm all right. It's a beautiful day, not a cloud in sight, so I guess I'm doing all right.
I think I got the best job in America right here.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
If there's any concerns about the neck injury of Brad Johnson, hey, folks, let it lie. Man threw 4 touchdown passes last week. If there is one concern, though, his mama's a little concerned that he's so crazy about Shania Twain. Which, by the way,
there's a
ain't no bad
deal. That's a free one. The offense, deservedly so, got an awful lot of credit last week. But, hey, give the defense some credit, and especially one that Howie really likes, John Randall.
Yeah, this is the kind of guy. Like Derek Thomas, he wreaks havoc in an offense's backfield. Now, what we're going to talk about is the kind of help Pat Harlow was praying for versus the Kansas City Chiefs last week. Bill Pickel, my former teammate, all-pro with the Raiders, going to be the offensive tackle, J.B. Center. Terry quarterback, Chris Collinsworth is going to play tight end. We're talking about ways to slow down a great pass rusher. Here, the tight end will what we call chip and release. That forces that defensive end to redirect. Now, Chris is going to move to halfback.
Hey, I didn't snap the ball. You were offside.
That's nothing new.
Okay. All right. Wait till I snap the ball.
Okay, now he's going to come up the field. Bang. John Randall playing defensive end. Bang. Chip and release. Now, we're going to kick him over to tight end. Chris is going to be tight end, but we're going to call it Y off. He's going to go in sneak motion. Now, John Randall doesn't see him. He's all the way over here. Bill Pickel's release outside. I'm looking at Bill Pickel, and it's a wham block. They wham him. Okay, now here's the coup d'etat, or whatever the hell. Now, Chris Collinsworth's going to kick out to wide receiver. Once again, John Randall is out wide. He comes up the field. The last guy he's worried about is this wide receiver.
You jumped offside.
Okay,
man.
quick.
I got it.
Last guy he's worried about is the wide receiver. He comes up the field. He's thinking tackle. They want my lunch money. Billy White Shoes Johnson.
That's it. That's what you live for, is a wideout right there.
Yeah, those wideouts. Today's wideouts, though, they're different than you. They don't want to come in there. Billy White Shoes Johnson one time jumped on my back and apologized as he was doing it down in Atlanta. These wideouts don't want to do it, but in today's game, you have to help an offensive tackle, especially on the road with crowd noise, as we saw with Pat Harlow.
He's not breathing hard. You guys have been beating on him.
We're all right now, right?
Yeah.
We're still cool? We're all right? Okay,
we're on
good.
camera.
All right,
With that in mind, we are indeed all right. There's more to come on today's Fox NFL Sunday, including a talk with the Cowboys in Big D. Now, the tune says the boys are back in town, but are the boys back to being an elite team?
Nobody wants us to win. Nobody expects us to win. They picked Phoenix to win over us in the first week. So everything we do is great.
EA Sports presents Cyberberry. If it's in the game, it's in the game. Madden NFL 99. EA Sports, it's in the game.
Our big early matchup on Fox NFL Sunday, the Battle of the Bays. Last time these two teams met, Green Bay's Brett Favre and Tampa Bay's Warren Sapp got to know each other a little better. Will they renew old acquaintances? For Sapp and the Bucs, the game is critical. A loss would put them at 0-2, both defeats being in the division. In Pittsburgh, it's the Bears and Steelers. Pittsburgh is driven by the bus, who, since he's become a Steeler, has rushed for more than 1,000 yards each year. On the other side, the Bears got good production out of their rushing tandem. Edgar Bennett and rookie Curtis Enis, the two combined for 107 yards and a touchdown last week. In St. Louis, it's the Rams and the Vikings. A change at running back for the Rams as former Chiefs back Greg Hill takes over from Gerald Moore, who fumbled 3 times last week. And Mr. Hill can expect to see a lot of Vikings defensive lineman John Randall, unless the Rams can block him as well as we showed on our football field. In New Orleans, it's the Saints and Panthers. Carolina's Kevin Green, a bright spot in their loss to the Falcons last week. He registered 3 sacks. Meanwhile, quarterback Danny Werfel gets the start for the Saints, taking over for Billy Joe Hobart, who blew out his Achilles tendon last week against the Rams. And in Atlanta, the Falcons and Eagles. Quarterback Chris Chandler showed he was worth the new contract that he signed at the beginning of the season as he led Atlanta to a victory last week. While on the other side, Ray Rhodes could be in trouble unless he gets better play from quarterback Bobby Hoye. The 38-0 loss to Seattle last week, the worst opening day loss in team history. As we welcome you back to Fox NFL Sunday. In the second half of our doubleheader, most of you will see the Denver Broncos going against the Dallas Cowboys. And you know, when the Cowboys hired Chan Gailey this offseason, quite a few people asked, Chan who? Even owner Jerry Jones misspoke his coach's name on a few occasions. Now, after an impressive opening day win, fans are finding out this Chan Gailey guy might be onto something. While nobody in Dallas is printing Super Bowl tickets just yet, as our Pam Oliver tells us, Gailey's got the boys believing again.
A new day dawns in Texas. The clean morning air offers a fresh start with new possibilities. Optimism rises with the morning sun. Much the same could be said at another ranch where some higher-paid cowboys ride the comeback trail in a decidedly different atmosphere.
this is heaven sent.
There's a sense of freshness to everything.
I'm not going to say it's all that different, because then I would be putting the blame on Coach Switzer.
I mean, it got ugly. This is no knock on the other coaches. I mean, I think, you know, I loved all the coaches that we've had here. This is starting to feel like professional football.
Stuff like enthusiasm and being excited, I haven't heard that from you guys in at least a couple of years.
Well, you haven't heard it from me.
I've sensed that they hated being called losers. It stuck in their craw, and they worked harder than any team I've ever been around.
After an appropriate ending to the Switzer years, hard work and change are what the Cowboys look to right a rickety ship. Scrapped along with the old regime, the once formidable offense which helped Dallas collect 3 Lombardis in the 90s.
It was like, this is old-fashioned now. It's like old-fashioned. We need to get new wrinkles here and there to throw people off, at least try to fool them some kind of way. We didn't even try to do that.
I'm a big fan of the offense that we ran. It's not the system as to why we were not successful. If we don't execute any better in this system, we're not going to be any better offensively.
They've handled change. They've adjusted. They're trying to do it. That's my responsibility, is to allow them to use their talents.
Aikman nearly gets sacked, and he escapes with the room.
I do like it. It's very different from what I'm used to. There's the potential there for some big plays, which I like.
Having a new head coach, a new guy come on board, did that kind of inspire you in some way?
Well, definitely, because when I look back at Pittsburgh offense, all their guards are pulling, everybody's moving, they're trapping, they're getting out on screens, and I knew at my present weight I couldn't do all of that. So I knew I had to make an adjustment if I wanted to impress this man to be here.
First game they ever tried in the NFL was Coach Chan Gailey. Okay, Coach?
So be sure of one thing, with their nucleus of determined stars still in place, the Cowboys under Gailey's guide seem to suggest you can take that fork and stick it somewhere else. Despite reports to the contrary, these boys say they ain't done yet.
I think we're going to surprise a lot of people. And I think towards the latter part of the season, people will start saying, man, these Cowboys, they might be surreal this time.
Cowboys at Broncos. Now, as we've already heard, with all due respect to your love for the Arizona Cardinals, it was Arizona that the Cowboys beat last week. But are folks getting a little too hyped up thinking that the Cowboys are back, Howie?
Yeah, I think it's premature to say they're Super Bowl level right now. Are they the team they were 5-6 years ago? No. That was a predictable team. As with most great teams, they keep it very simple. Dallas Cowboys of old kept it simple. They had 3 or 4 running plays, they had 3 or 4 passing plays, and they wore you out. The reason why they wore you out, they had better talent than everyone. Right now, there's sprinklings of that. Troy Aikman has been sold on the concept of spreading the ball around. He did that last week. They ran the ball effectively. How did they do it? Well, they spread it out. Last year, when they couldn't run the ball, they brought more people in. They brought 6 people into the offensive line, tight end, 2 tight ends, bringing 2 tight ends, a fullback. There's 8 people up there. They couldn't get it done. It was very simple. Chan Gailey brings in a fresh approach. They spread the ball around, spread the defense. Allows them to run the football, allows them to spread the ball around. You got to sell Troy Aikman. Not many quarterbacks can assimilate into an offense as quickly as Troy Aikman has. Is it enough to beat the Denver Broncos in Denver? I don't think so. Chan Gailey has had success versus Denver Broncos when he was with Pittsburgh. But that was with Jerome Bettis and his punishing style of offense and running the ball.
You know, though, this is a great test, and I'm excited about this ball game today because we're going to find out about the Dallas Cowboys. Are they ready to make that next step? They certainly look like it, but remember on opening day last year, they blew out the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then things fell apart from there. But I talked to Troy Aikman this week. Boy, is he excited about what's happening there.
All right, folks. We will hear from Terry in the next segment. Promise you that.
They took me out of this segment.
Boy. We're just 10 minutes from kickoff here on Fox NFL Sunday. And time to find out how many people delivered in the clutch last week, like Terry does every week. And in our Pizza Hut Deliveries tote board, we see that 23 players were involved in scores that put their team ahead to stay, led by 8 quarterbacks, TB, and followed by 7 wide receivers.
When we created NFL Game Day 99, we used playbooks straight from the NFL teams. Denver's power running attack, Pittsburgh's zone blitz, all the team's special secrets. Entire franchises trust us with their most cherished possessions. Naturally, we keep them under strict lock and key.
Jackpot. Terrell, how we getting down?
PlayStation.
Back now for final thoughts. Last week, 7 quarterbacks injured opening week, Chris.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why when teams are playing on the road, the tackles simply cannot hear. It happened last week in the game with Kansas City. Just simply cannot hear out there, and so those defensive tackles get a jump. Everything in the NFL is geared around protecting the quarterback. The league needs to come up with something for this one.
Yeah, look for the big key in the Green Bay game is Rivera, their left guard. First year starting versus Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp has torn that team up. It'll be interesting to see that, you know, Brett Favre talks about Warren Sapp being a guy that bothers him the most, him and John Randall. Big matchup today.
I just don't have a lot of confidence in Tampa Bay beating Green Bay. I want to, but...
Is that your Super Bowl pick, though?
Yeah, no. But I do want to say one thing for Dave Campo, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. One thing they did this season that the Cowboys have never done in their defensive line. With their 4-down linemen, they're now taking them in Pittman, and Ellis is flopping. Their tackles are flopping. They're playing overs and unders, something they've never done. And they have their best 8 players in the line they've had in a long time.
By the way, Terry
Take us out of here, bub.
Terry is keeping calculus. For those of you getting an early game, your game is next. We'll see you at halftime. For the rest of you, we'll be back after this. Terry will keep calculus on his classroom schedule.